I signed the closing papers believing I had finally purchased a lock my family did not have a key to. It cost me every cent I had saved over 5 years of quiet discipline. But when I returned early, I found my front door rekeyed and my kitchen gutted. Standing amidst the sawdust, my sister smiled at me, wearing work gloves paid for with my stolen money, and told me I should be grateful she had stepped in to save me. The ink on the closing documents was still wet when I felt the first true breath of oxygen I had taken in 33 years. The title company office smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner, but to me, it smelled like sovereignty. I handed over a cashier's check that represented 5 years of skipped vacations, brown-bagged lunches, and freelance design work done between the hours of midnight and 4 in the morning. When the escrow officer slid the keys across the mahogany table, she did not just hand me access to a structure, she handed me a physical boundary that I could finally lock. My purchase was a small A-frame cabin tucked into the dense pine ridges outside Pine Hollow, Colorado. It was not a mansion. It was barely 1,700 square feet of cedar siding and single-pane windows that rattled when the wind came down off the peaks. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I owned something that was not considered community property by the Parker family. I drove up the mountain that afternoon, the air cooling as the elevation climbed. The road switched back and forth, shedding the suburban sprawl of the valley floor until the trees crowded the asphalt, thick and ancient. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the silence of the place hit me. There were no voices asking for loans. There was no mother criticizing my choice of footwear. There was no Sloan. I walked through the empty rooms, listening to the creak of the floorboards. The kitchen was dated, featuring laminate countertops the color of Dijon mustard and cabinetry that had been fashionable when Reagan was president. But it was functional. I ran my hand over the formica. I had a plan. I was a project manager by trade. I lived my life in Gantt charts and budget spreadsheets. I would live with the mustard counters for 12 months while I built up a renovation fund. I would fix the deck first, then the roof. And the kitchen would wait until I could pay for it in cash. That was the rule. No debt, no chaos. 2 days later, I made the mistake of telling my family. We were at my parents' house for Sunday dinner, a ritual that felt less like a meal and more like a performance review. My mother, Raina, was plating roast chicken while my father, Grant, poured wine with the heavy, silent, precise motion of a man who preferred objects to people. Sloan arrived late, as she always did, bringing with her a gust of wind and the frenetic energy that sucked the air out of every room she entered. I waited until dessert to drop the news. "I bought a house," I said, keeping my voice steady. "A small cabin up near Pine Hollow." My mother froze with the pie server mid-air. "You bought a house? Alone?" "Yes," I said. "I closed on Tuesday." Sloan looked up from her phone, her eyes bright and predatory. "Pine Hollow? That is gorgeous. Oh my God. Willow, that is amazing." "It is small," I said quickly, trying to shrink the target. "It needs a lot of work. It is not really set up for guests yet." "We finally have a vacation house," Sloan squealed, clapping her hands. She turned to our mother. "Mom, can you imagine the Christmases? We can all go up there and get snowed in." I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. The sensation of my boundaries being dissolved by their assumptions. "It is not a vacation house, Sloan. It is my primary residence. I am moving there." "Well, sure," Sloan said, waving her hand dismissively. "But you have extra room, right? You are not going to live alone in the woods like a hermit. This is great. I have been dying to get out of the city for a weekend." I looked at my father, hoping for some acknowledgement of the financial discipline it had taken to achieve this. He just took a sip of wine and said, "Interest rates are high right now. Hope you locked in something decent." "I did," I said. "The next week, I established the rules. I did not give my parents a key. I certainly did not give Sloan a key. I bought a heavy-duty realtor's lockbox and attached it to the gas meter pipe around the side of the house, hidden behind a stack of firewood. Inside, I placed a spare key and an envelope containing $3,000 in cash, my absolute emergency fund for winter storms, broken pipes, or a tow truck. I treated the cabin like a fortress. I moved my few belongings in: a gray sectional sofa, my desk, my books, and a single bed frame. I spent my evenings staring at the budget spreadsheet, calculating how much I could save if I kept the thermostat at 62 degrees. It was a cold existence, but it was peaceful. Then came the work trip. My company needed me in Seattle for 4 days to oversee a software rollout. I hesitated. I had only been in the cabin for 3 weeks. It felt vulnerable leaving it empty, but the mortgage had to be paid, and the bonus for this trip would cover the first 6 months of property taxes. I packed my bag on a Tuesday morning. I checked the windows. I checked the back door. I walked around to the side of the house and checked the lockbox. It was secure. The combination was a random string of numbers I had memorized. Nothing tied to birthdays or anniversaries. I felt safe. "Do not worry," I whispered to the empty room as I walked out. "I will be back on Saturday." By Thursday, the anxiety had started to itch beneath my skin. I was sitting in a conference room in downtown Seattle, listening to a developer explain why the API integration was failing. When my phone buzzed against the mahogany table, it was a text from Lila Henning, my nearest neighbor. Lila was a retired schoolteacher who lived a quarter mile down the road. We had bonded briefly over a shared hatred of the local raccoons. The text read, "Saw a blue SUV go up your drive. Just checking you made it back early?" My stomach dropped. I drove a silver sedan. Sloan drove a blue SUV. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I typed back, "No, I am still in Seattle. It is probably my sister checking on the place. I asked her to water the plants." I had not asked her to water the plants. I did not have any plants. I put the phone down, telling myself to breathe. If I called Sloan now, she would accuse me of being paranoid. She would say she just wanted to surprise me, to drop off a housewarming gift, to be a good sister. If I called the police, I would be the dramatic one. I would be the daughter who wasted police resources on her own family. Do not start drama. I told myself, she is probably just looking. She is curious. She will leave. I focused on the meeting. I forced myself to nod at the appropriate times. I buried the feeling of dread under layers of professional detachment. The meeting on Friday morning was canceled. The client had a family emergency. I changed my flight within 10 minutes of the notification. Paying the change fee without blinking, I needed to get home. The itch had become a burn. I landed in Denver at 2 p.m. and drove west. Pushing my sedan harder than usual on the incline, the mountains were gray and imposing, the sky threatening a summer thunderstorm. By the time I turned onto the county road leading to Pine Hollow, the first drops of rain were hitting the windshield. I turned into my driveway, and the first thing I saw was the dumpster. It was a massive steel container, bright orange, sitting in the middle of my gravel turnaround like a wound. It was filled with debris, shards of wood, twisted metal, and black trash bags. My breath caught in my throat. I parked my car behind the blue SUV that was indeed sitting right next to the front porch. I stepped out into the rain, the smell of wet dust and old pine filling my nose. I walked up the steps. There were boxes stacked on the porch, sheltered from the rain by the overhang. They were sleek, expensive-looking boxes labeled with a high-end kitchen manufacturer's logo. Scrawled across the packing slip in black marker was the name, Sloan Parker. I reached for my keys, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped them. I slid the key into the deadbolt. It didn't turn. I frowned, shoving it harder. It wouldn't budge. I pulled it out and looked at the lock. It was shiny, new, brushed nickel instead of the aged brass that had been there 3 days ago. Above the handle, a digital keypad blinked with a soft blue light. I was locked out of my own house. I didn't knock. I pounded on the wood with the flat of my hand. "Sloan, open this door." There was a muffled sound from inside, the heavy thud of boots, and then the electronic whir of the lock disengaging. The door swung open. Sloane stood there. She was wearing a pair of pristine leather work gloves and a tool belt that looked like it had been bought that morning. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun that was artfully constructed to look casual. She smiled at me, a wide, beaming expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Surprise!" she shouted, throwing her arms out. I walked past her, pushing into the living room. "What are you doing? Why is my key not working?" "I had to upgrade security," she said, following me. "That old lock was a joke. Willow, you are a single woman living in the woods. I did it for your safety." I stopped dead in the archway leading to the kitchen. The kitchen was gone. The mustard countertops were gone. The upper cabinets were ripped from the walls, leaving jagged scars in the drywall and exposed insulation. The stove was sitting in the middle of the living room, unplugged. The sink was missing, the pipes capped with red plastic stoppers. The floor was covered in a layer of gray dust and drywall crumbs. I stood there, blinking, unable to process the violence of the scene, my sanctuary, my budget, my plan. "What did you do?" I whispered. Sloane stepped up beside me, putting a gloved hand on my shoulder. She smelled like sawdust and expensive perfume. "I know, it looks rough right now, but you have to have vision. Willow, we are going to open this whole space up." I shrugged her hand off violently. "Who said you could do this? I have owned this house for 3 weeks." "I had to step in," Sloane said, her voice taking on that familiar, condescending, soothing tone she used when she wanted to make me feel irrational. "I came up to drop off a rug, which you desperately needed. By the way, and I saw the state of this kitchen, Willow. There was mold under the sink, black mold. It was unsafe." "There was no mold," I said, my voice rising. "I had an inspection. I have the report." "Inspectors miss things," Sloane insisted. I pulled back the toe kick and it was everywhere. I couldn't let my little sister live in a biohazard. So, I made an executive decision. I called in a favor. "We are going to give you a chef's kitchen. You are going to thank me later." "Thank you?" I spun around to face her. "You gutted my house. How are you paying for this?" "Sloane, I do not have the money for a renovation." She waved her hand airily. "Don't worry about the money. I am handling the logistics. It is an investment. Do you know how much value this adds? We are talking $50,000 in equity. Easy. She kept saying we. "Where is my lockbox?" I asked, a sudden cold spike of adrenaline hitting my stomach. "Oh, that rusty thing?" Sloane laughed. "I took it down. It was an eyesore. I brought the contents inside." I pushed past her into the bedroom, my documents folder, which I had left in the bottom drawer of my desk, was sitting on top of the bed. It was open. My deed, my insurance papers, my amortization schedule. They were splayed out like a deck of cards. I picked up the folder. The envelope with the cash was gone. I turned back to the hallway, my vision tunneling. "Where is the cash? Sloane?" "There was $3,000 in an envelope in the lockbox." Sloane appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. She looked bored now, annoyed that I wasn't weeping with gratitude. "I used it for the deposit on the materials. Contractors don't take credit cards for the initial buy. Willow, I had to use what was available. I will pay you back when my next commission check clears." God, you are so uptight. I am literally building you a dream kitchen and you are worrying about pennies. "It was my emergency fund," I said, my voice trembling not with fear, but with a rage so hot it felt cold. "You stole my money." "I reallocated your capital," she corrected sharply. "Stop using words like steal. We are family. Family helps each other." Before I could scream, the front door opened again. A man walked in. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a Carhartt vest and carrying a clipboard. He looked at me, then at Sloane, and offered a tentative smile. "Hey," he said. "The lumber yard says the island slab is on back order, but we can—" He stopped, sensing the tension in the room. "Miles, this is my sister, Willow," Sloane said brightly, stepping between us. "She came back early. She is just overwhelmed by the surprise. Miles extended a hand. Nice to meet you. Willow, Miles Rourke. Sloan has told me so much about you. You have got a great place here. We are going to make it really special. I looked at his hand. I did not shake it. Did you ask to see the deed? I asked him. Did you ask to see proof of ownership before you tore my cabinets out? Miles dropped his hand, looking confused. Sloan handled the paperwork. She sent over the authorization. What authorization? I asked. The email, Miles said, looking at Sloan. The one giving the go-ahead for the demo and the budget approval. I looked at Sloan. She was studying her fingernails, avoiding my gaze. I never sent an email, I said to Miles. I have been in Seattle. It came from your account, Miles said, his brow furrowing. willowparkerdesigns@gmail, right? My blood ran cold. My email address was Willow, Parker, Designs, dots, not just words. It was a subtle difference, one that would be easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. Show me, I said. Miles pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. He held it out. There it was, an email chain from willowparkerdesigns@gmail.com. Subject: Cabin Reno. Go ahead. Hi, Miles. So excited to get started. Please coordinate everything with Sloan while I'm tied up with work. She has full proxy on decisions. Let's get that ugly kitchen out of there. Best, Willow. I felt sick. It wasn't just the lie. It was the tone, the exclamation points, the casual dismissal of my home. It sounded like Sloan trying to sound like me, but failing because she didn't know me at all. I looked up at Sloan. You made a fake email account? I was helping, she snapped, dropping the facade. You would have said no. You always say no. You are so afraid of spending money, so afraid of living a little. I knew if I just got it started, you would see how much better it could be. I am doing this for you. Willow, why can't you just say thank you? Get out, I said. What? Get out, I repeated, my voice dropping to a whisper. Both of you, get out of my house. Willow, be reasonable, Sloan said, stepping forward. We can't just leave. The kitchen is demolished. You can't cook. You can't— I said get out, I screamed, the sound tearing at my throat. It shocked them both. I was the quiet one. I was the one who absorbed the shock, who smoothed the edges. I never raised my voice. Miles backed up, hands raised. Okay, look, I am going to head out. We can discuss this tomorrow. He retreated out the front door, the screen slamming behind him. Sloan stood her ground for a moment longer, her face twisting into a mask of martyrdom. You are unbelievable, she hissed. I work my ass off to do something nice for you, and this is how you treat me. You are so selfish. Willow, you have always been selfish. She stormed out, grabbing her purse from the pile of debris. I heard her car door slam, then the engine roar to life. I stood in the center of the living room. The silence rushed back in, but it was different now. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a crime scene. I walked to the front door and locked it. The digital keypad beeped at me, a cheerful little sound that mocked my lack of control. I went back to the kitchen. I stood in the dust. I looked at the capped pipes. I looked at the empty space where my coffee maker used to sit. I felt a stinging in my eyes, but I refused to cry. Crying was what Sloan wanted. Crying was admission that I was overwhelmed, that I needed her help to fix what she had broken. I walked to the bedroom and found my sleeping bag in the closet. I unrolled it on the living room floor, away from the dust of the kitchen. I couldn't sleep in the bed. The bed felt too permanent, and right now, I felt like a squatter in my own life. I lay in the dark, listening to the wind rattle the windows. I thought about the $3,000. I thought about the fake email. I thought about the look in Sloan's eyes, the absolute certainty that she had the right to rearrange my existence because she decided it wasn't good enough. She thought this was about a kitchen. She thought she could bully me into liking the backsplash, and then I would pay the bill and we would go back to being Willow the doormat and Sloan the golden child. I stared up at the ceiling. watching the shadows of the pine branches dance across the drywall. She was wrong. This wasn't a renovation. This was an invasion. And come morning, I wasn't going to pick out tile. I was going to war. I woke up with the taste of drywall dust in my mouth. My back was stiff from sleeping on the living room floor, and the morning light filtering through the bare windows was gray and unforgiving. For a moment, suspended between sleep and wakefulness, I forgot. I reached for the nightstand that wasn't there, expecting to check the time, only to have my hand hit the cold wood of the floorboards. Then the memory of the previous night rushed back, the dumpster in the driveway, the missing cabinets, Sloane's performative smile. I sat up, pulling the sleeping bag around my shoulders. The cabin was freezing. Without the kitchen insulation, the cold from the crawl space was seeping up through the subfloor. I stood and walked to the kitchen doorway, staring at the wreckage. It looked worse in the daylight. The capped pipes stuck out of the wall like severed arteries. The outline of the old cabinets was ghosted onto the paint, a map of what had been taken from me. I needed coffee, but I had no coffee maker. I had no electricity in half the house. I had no water in the kitchen. I walked to the bathroom, washed my face with freezing tap water, and dressed in the same clothes I had worn yesterday. I needed to think like a project manager. When a project goes off the rails, you do not panic. You audit, you assess the damage, you quantify the loss. I sat on the floor with my laptop tethered to my phone's hotspot. I logged into my bank accounts. The first thing I noticed was the silence in my checking account. I had been expecting a deposit from a freelance client, a boutique hotel in Denver for whom I had designed a lobby layout. The invoice was for $4,500. It was due yesterday. The balance was unchanged. I logged into the freelance platform. I navigated to the payment settings. My stomach turned over. The routing number had been changed 3 days ago. The last 4 digits of the account number were unfamiliar. I clicked on the edit history. The change had been made from an IP address in Pine Hollow. My money, my rent for the month, my grocery budget, my savings had been rerouted. I opened a new tab and checked my credit report. I had a subscription to a monitoring service that I rarely checked, but today the red notification badge on the dashboard seemed to pulse like a warning light. New inquiry. High-altitude lending. Hard pull. Date. Yesterday. I clicked the details. An application for a home improvement loan in the amount of $25,000. It was pending approval. I sat back against the wall, the laptop burning my thighs. Sloane hadn't just used the cash in the lockbox. She was systematically redirecting my financial blood flow into her own veins. She wasn't just renovating a kitchen. She was leveraging my creditworthiness to fund it. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline spiking. I walked to the window. The blue SUV was back. Sloane hopped out, carrying a cardboard tray of coffees and a white paper bag from the local bakery. She looked fresh, rested, and terrifyingly cheerful. I met her at the door before she could punch in the code on the new lock. I opened it and stood in the threshold, blocking her entry. "Good morning," she chirped, holding up the tray. "I brought lattes and scones. I figured you would be hungry since the kitchen is, well, in transition." "In transition," I repeated flatly. "Can I come in? It is freezing out here." I didn't move. "Did you change the direct deposit info on my design account?" Sloane's smile didn't falter, but her eyes did a quick, flickering assessment of my face. "Oh, that? I was going to tell you. I needed to route some funds for the contractor's second draw. They needed it immediately to secure the slab, and I knew you were busy in Seattle. I figured since it was money you earned for us." "Us?" I interrupted. "There is no us, Sloane. That was my paycheck. That was my money for bills. And this is an investment for us," she said, pushing past me. I was too stunned by her audacity to hold the line. She walked into the living room and set the coffee on the floor near my sleeping bag. "Willow, you have to stop thinking so small. When this kitchen is done, the equity in this place is going to skyrocket. I am just borrowing against that future value. I am practically making you money. She talked about my finances as if they were a community garden, something she had a right to harvest because she had decided to help with the weeding. And the loan application? I asked, following her. $25,000? Sloane waved a hand dismissively. That is just a pre-qualification. I didn't sign anything final yet. I just wanted to see what rates we could get. You have such good credit, Willow. It is a waste not to use it. I did not authorize an inquiry, I said, my voice shaking. That is fraud. Identity theft. Sloane spun around, her face hardening. Oh, stop it. You are overreacting. You always do this. You turn everything into a catastrophe. I am your sister. I am trying to give you a beautiful home, and you are acting like I am a criminal. Do you know how much stress I have been under trying to manage this project for you? I did not ask you to manage it. You didn't have to, she shouted back. That is what family does. We step in. We help. You were living with mustard yellow countertops. Willow, it was embarrassing. I am fixing it. Now drink your coffee and stop being so ungrateful. She turned her back on me and started moving boxes of tile samples, humming to herself as if the conversation was over, as if she had won simply by refusing to acknowledge the reality of what she had done. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that arguing with Sloane was like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. She didn't operate on logic. She operated on a narrative where she was the protagonist and everyone else was a supporting character whose resources existed to further her plot. I turned around, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. Where are you going? She called after me. The cabinet guys are coming at 10. I didn't answer. I got in my car and drove straight to town. The office of Rourke Construction was located in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a bait shop. The bell above the door jingled as I walked in. The space was small, smelling of stale cigarette smoke and sawdust. Miles Rourke sat behind a metal desk that was buried under stacks of paper. He looked up, and his face fell when he saw me. He looked like a man who knew he was caught in the middle of a domestic dispute and desperately wanted to be anywhere else. Ms. Parker, he said, standing up. Look, about yesterday. I want to see the paperwork, I said, cutting him off. Everything, the contract, the change orders, the emails, now. He hesitated, glancing at the filing cabinet. I mean, technically, since Sloane is the project lead, I am the homeowner, I said, leaning my hands on his desk. My name is on the deed. My name is on the checks. If you do not show me that file right now, I will walk next door to the sheriff's substation and file a report for trespassing and destruction of property. It was a bluff. The substation was actually 3 blocks away. But Miles didn't know that. He swallowed hard and opened the filing cabinet. He pulled out a thick manila folder and slid it across the desk. I opened it. The first page was a standard work order for a full kitchen remodel. The estimated cost was $42,000. At the bottom of the page was a signature, Willow Parker. It was a good forgery. The loop of the W was slightly too wide, and the P lacked the sharp downward stroke I usually used. But to a stranger, it looked authentic. It looked like the signature on my driver's license. Sloane had practiced. She signed this in front of you? I asked. No, Miles said, shifting his weight. She brought it in signed. She said you signed it before you left for Seattle. I flipped the page. There was a copy of the check Sloane had given him. The deposit. It was a cashier's check. That was how she bypassed the signature requirement on a personal check. She had taken my cash, bought a cashier's check, and handed it over. Then I found the emails. Miles had printed them out. I stared at the header. From willowparkerdesigns@gmail.com to miles@rourkeconstruction.com. I read the thread. It was a chronicle of intimate violation. Miles. Just wanted to confirm we are taking out the soffits. It will add to the labor cost. Fake Willow. Yes, absolutely. I hate those things. Just get it done. Sloane knows what I want. Miles. We need to pick a finish for the hardware. Fake Willow. Sloane has the samples. Whatever she picks is fine. She has better taste than I do anyway. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me. She has better taste than I do anyway. It wasn't just that she had impersonated me, it was that she had created a version of me that was submissive, self-deprecating, and deferential to her. She had used my name to stroke her own ego. She had engineered a digital puppet show where I applauded her from the audience while she robbed me blind. "This email account," I said quietly, pointing to the address. "Who gave this to you?" "Sloan wrote it down on the intake form," Miles said. "My email address has dots in it," I said. "Willow.parker.designs. This account does not exist. Or rather, it didn't exist until my sister created it to trick you." Miles went pale. He rubbed the back of his neck, his rough hand making a rasping sound against his skin. "Ms. Parker, I had no idea. She had the keys. She had the code. She had the money. I just assumed." "You assumed wrong," I said. "You are working on a house without the owner's permission. You have destroyed my kitchen based on a fraudulent contract." "I will stop," he said quickly. "I will pull the guys. We won't touch another thing. You will give me copies of all of this," I said, "and you will write a statement confirming that you never spoke to me personally, only to Sloan, and that she provided this contract." "I don't want to get involved in legal trouble," he stammered. "You are already involved." "Miles," I said, "the only question is whether you are a witness or a defendant." He started typing. I drove back to the cabin with the file on the passenger seat. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The nausea had been replaced by a cold. Sharp clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a campaign. When I walked back into the cabin, Sloan was in the living room, holding up tile samples against the wall. "I think the gray slate is too dark," she mused, not turning around. "Maybe we go with the marble hexagon?" "I saw the emails," I said. Sloan froze. She slowly lowered the tile. She turned around, and for the first time, she looked wary. "What?" "I went to Miles's office. I saw the emails you sent from the account you created. Willow Parker Designs, without the dots." Sloan sighed. A long, exaggerated exhalation of breath. She dropped the tile onto the pile on the floor. "Okay. So, I made an email. Big deal." "You impersonated me," I said. "You forged my signature. You authorized work in my name." "Because you would have said no," she shouted, throwing her hands up. "That is the only reason. If I had asked you, you would have agonized over the budget for 6 months and then decided to just paint the cabinets white. I had to bypass your neuroses to get this done. I did it for you." "You lied to me," I said. "You stole my identity." "I used a loophole," she argued. "It is not identity theft if I am doing it to improve your property. I never meant any harm. I just wanted to surprise you." God, why do you have to be so rigid? Can't you just see the intention? "The intention was to control me," I said. "The intention was to use my money to play house because you are broke and bored." Her face twisted. "I am not broke. I am in transition." "Give me my keys," I said. "No." "Sloan, give me the keys and the code to the door." "I paid for the lock," she screamed. "It is my lock." I walked over to her. I am 3 inches shorter than Sloan, but in that moment, I felt 10 feet tall. "If you do not give me the keys, I am calling the police, and I will show them the emails." She stared at me, her chest heaving. Then, with a snarl of disgust, she reached into her pocket and threw the keys at my face. They hit my cheek, a sharp sting of metal, and clattered to the floor. "You are a bitch," she spat. "I try to help you, and this is what I get." She stormed out again. This time, she didn't slam the door. She left it wide open, letting the cold wind blow the sawdust around my ankles. I locked the door and sat on the floor, trembling. I needed an adult. I needed a parent, even at 33. The instinct to call my mother when I was hurt was overwhelming. I dialed Raina's number. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi, honey," she said. "Sloan told me she is making great progress on the kitchen. It sounds exciting." I closed my eyes. Sloan had already gotten to her. Sloane always got to her first. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Sloane broke into my house. She forged my signature on a contract. She stole money from my business account. I just kicked her out." There was a silence on the other end. A heavy, disappointed silence. "Willow," my mother said finally, her tone shifting from warm to weary, "don't you think that is a little dramatic? Kicking her out?" "She gutted my kitchen. Mom, without my permission." "She wanted to surprise you," Raina said. "She has been so excited about this. She called me yesterday almost in tears because she wanted it to be perfect for you. You know how Sloane is. She leads with her heart." "She committed fraud," I said. "She made a fake email account to pretend to be me." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Raina snapped. "She was trying to help. You have always been so particular. She probably was just afraid you would shut her down. You know, Willow, just because you have had a little success doesn't mean you have to be so cold. You have this house, this stability. Sloane is going through a hard time. She needs a win. Would it kill you to be generous?" "Generous?" I choked out. "She stole $5,000. "We will pay you back," Raina said, using the royal we. "Your father and I can help if it is really about the money, but don't make Sloane feel unwelcome in your home. That is your sister. Family is the only thing that matters." "Does my consent matter?" I asked. "Does my safety matter?" "You are safe," Raina said dismissively. "It is a kitchen remodel, not a war zone. Apologize to her. Willow, let her finish the project. It will be good for her self-esteem." I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. My mother wasn't hearing me. She was rewriting the script in real time, casting Sloane as the misunderstood visionary and me as the miserly villain. "I have to go," I said, and hung up before she could guilt me further. I sat there for a long time, the silence of the cabin heavy around me. I realized then that I wasn't just fighting Sloane. I was fighting the entire architecture of my family. In the afternoon, I went outside to inspect the damage to the exterior. The dumpster was still there, an orange monolith. "Willow!" I looked up. Lila Henning was standing at the edge of the property line, wearing a gardening hat and holding a pair of shears. She waved me over. I walked down the driveway to the split-rail fence that separated our lots. "I saw the commotion earlier," Lila said, her eyes kind but sharp. "Everything all right?" "Just family drama," I said, forcing a smile. "Renovation headaches." Lila nodded slowly. I figured, listen, I wasn't going to say anything because it is none of my business. "But are you selling?" I frowned. "No, why?" "Well," Lila said, leaning closer, "when you were gone, I saw a car here. Not your sister's. It was a black Lexus. Had a decal on the side. Pine Hollow Realty. A woman got out. And your sister walked her around the property. They were walking the perimeter, pointing at the roof, the deck." My blood ran cold. "Did you hear what they were saying?" "Bits and pieces," Lila said. "The wind carries. I heard your sister talking about making it presentable for showings and timeline for listing. I thought maybe you were flipping it." I gripped the rough wood of the fence. "No, I am definitely not selling." "Okay," Lila said, looking concerned. "I just thought it was odd. She was acting like she owned the place, talking about the potential and market value." "Thank you for telling me, Lila," I said. I went back inside and immediately opened my laptop. I searched every real estate site I could think of. Zillow, Redfin, the local MLS. I searched my address. Nothing. It wasn't listed. Yet. But the intention was clear. Sloane wasn't just remodeling a kitchen. She was staging a product. She was preparing to sell my home out from under me. Or perhaps trick me into selling it. Or, and this was the thought that made me truly terrified, forge my signature on a listing agreement just like she had on the construction contract. I couldn't just say stop anymore. I needed armor. Dana Keene's law office was in a converted Victorian house on the edge of town. It smelled of lemon polish and old books. Dana was a woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me. "You have a big problem," she said. "I know," I said. "It is not just the money," Dana said. "It is the assumption of agency. Your sister is acting as your proxy without legal standing. If she hires a plumber who floods the house, you are liable. If she hurts herself on the property, she could sue you. If she lists the house and a buyer puts down earnest money, you could be tied up in litigation for months proving you didn't authorize it." "What do I do?" I asked. "First," Dana said, holding up a finger, "you freeze everything: credit bureaus, bank accounts, change every password you have, two-factor authentication on everything." "Done?" I said. "Second," she continued, "we send a formal notice to vacate and cease and desist. It needs to be in writing. It needs to be certified mail. We tell her she is not permitted on the property and that any further authorized work will be considered criminal trespass." "Okay," I said, my stomach tightening at the thought of the explosion that would cause. "Third," Dana said, her voice grave, "you need to file a police report regarding the identity theft and the forgery." I hesitated. "A police report? That creates a criminal record." "Willow," Dana said softly, "she forged your name. She opened credit in your name. That is a felony. If you do not report it, you are tacitly accepting the debt. If she defaults on that loan she applied for, or if she runs up charges on your accounts, the bank will come after you. Without a police report, you have no defense. You can't say, 'It wasn't me,' if you didn't tell the authorities it wasn't you when you found out." "She is my sister," I whispered. "If I file a report, she could go to jail." "She put herself in that position," Dana said. "You didn't put her there." I looked out the window at the quiet street of Pine Hollow. I thought about my mother's voice telling me to be generous. I thought about Sloane's face when she threw the keys at me, the pure, unadulterated entitlement. If I filed the report, I was declaring war on my family. I would be the daughter who sent her sister to prison. But if I didn't, I was handing Sloane the deed to my life. "I need to think about the police report," I said. "But do the letter, the notice to vacate, and the cease and desist." Dana nodded. "I will draft it today. But Willow, compassion without boundaries is just self-destruction. You need to protect yourself." I drove home as the sun was setting behind the peaks. The cabin was dark when I arrived. I walked into the kitchen and turned on the flashlight on my phone. The light swept over the torn-out cabinets, the dust, the emptiness. I took a deep breath. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. I photographed the capped pipes. I photographed the missing appliances. I photographed the box of tile samples Sloane had left behind. I photographed the lockbox she had destroyed. I uploaded them to a cloud folder my family didn't know existed. Then I scanned the documents Miles had given me. The forged contract, the fake emails. I was shaking. But I didn't stop. I was building a wall. Brick by brick. Receipt by receipt. I wanted to be a sister. But Sloane had forced me to be a plaintiff. And if she wanted to play games with my reality, I was going to make sure the scoreboard was written in ink that wouldn't wash away. I sat on my sleeping bag, the blue light of the laptop illuminating my face, and waited for the fallout. I knew it was coming, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to move out of the way. The printer in the corner of the room hummed, a rhythmic, mechanical sound that felt strangely grounding amidst the chaos of my life. I watched as the pages slid out, one by one, warm to the touch. This was not a letter. It was a boundary made of ink and paper. I had spent the morning drafting it with Dana, my attorney. It was titled, "Notice to Cease Activity and Vacate." The language was stripped of all emotion, distilled down to the cold. Hard facts of property law. It stated that Sloane Parker had no legal claim to the property, no authorization to contract work, and no right of tenancy. It demanded the immediate return of all keys, a full accounting of all funds spent, and the removal of her personal belongings by Friday at 5 p.m. I placed one copy in an envelope addressed to Sloane's apartment in the city, slapping a certified mail sticker on it. The other copy I took with me to the front door of the cabin. I used blue painter's tape, the only tape I could find in the debris, and affixed the notice at eye level. It felt ridiculous. Taping a legal threat to my own front door for a sister who treated my home like a dollhouse. But Dana had been clear. Paper trails win lawsuits. Feelings lose them. I was in the kitchen, photographing the exposed wiring where the range hood used to be. When the front door opened, the beeping of the keypad was followed immediately by the sound of tearing paper. Sloane stormed in, the crumpled notice in her fist. She looked devastatingly chic in a camel trench coat and oversized sunglasses, a stark contrast to the sawdust-covered floor. "Is this a joke?" she asked, her voice trembling not with rage, but with a wounded fragility that I knew well. She held up the paper. "You are serving me? Like I am some squatter?" "You are a squatter. Sloane," I said, not looking up from my phone screen. "You are not on the lease. You are not on the deed. You are here without permission." She dropped the paper on the floor and stepped over it, her eyes filling with tears. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times. It was the face she made when she crashed my car in high school, the face she made when she borrowed my rent money and forgot to pay it back. "I have been sleeping on a blow-up mattress in the spare room for 3 days, trying to fix this dump for you," she sobbed. "Do you know how cold it is in here? It is practically unlivable. Willow, I am suffering to give you something nice, and you treat me like a criminal. I am your sister." I felt the old reflex kick in, the urge to comfort her, to apologize for being too harsh, to smooth things over. It was a muscle memory built over 3 decades of family conditioning. Sloane is sensitive. Sloane means well. Be the bigger person. I clenched my hands into fists to stop them from reaching out. "If it is unlivable, then leave. That is what the notice says." "I can't just leave," she cried. "The contractors need direction. The cabinets are arriving next week. If I walk away now, you will be left with a shell. Is that what you want? You want to live in a construction site because you are too proud to let me help you?" "I want you to stop spending my money," I said. "I am spending it on you," she screamed, the tears spilling over now. "God, you are so cold. You have always been this way. You count every penny and measure every ounce of love like it is a transaction. I feel sorry for you, Willow. I really do." She turned and ran into the bedroom, slamming the door. Moments later, I heard the muffled sounds of her weeping, loud enough to be heard through the thin walls. I stood in the kitchen, shaking. It wasn't the anger that scared me. It was the doubt. Her words were precision engineered to hit my insecurities. Am I cold? Am I ungrateful? I shook my head, physically dislodging the thought. I walked to my laptop and opened my bank statement again. A new charge had appeared pending on my credit card. Pine Hollow Self-Store, $150. I frowned. I didn't have a storage unit. I grabbed my keys and walked out, ignoring the sobbing from the bedroom. Pine Hollow Self-Store was a row of corrugated metal shacks behind a chain-link fence on the south side of town. I went to the front office. The manager, a man with a grease-stained hat, looked up from a crossword puzzle. "I am Willow Parker," I said. "I believe I have a unit here." He typed my name into the computer. "Unit 42? You rented it 4 days ago." "I lost my key," I lied. "Can you cut the lock?" "I have my ID." He shrugged, grabbed a pair of bolt cutters, and walked me to the unit. He snapped the padlock, and the door rolled up with a screech of metal on metal. I stared into the gloom. The unit was full. Stacked neatly against the walls were my kitchen cabinets. The mustard yellow laminates I hated, but which were still perfectly functional. My stove was there, my dishwasher, the sink, even the light fixtures. "She kept them," I whispered. Sloane had told me she hauled everything to the dump. She had charged me for a dumpster. But here they were. I walked in and touched the counter. Taped to the top cabinet was a handwritten sign. "Vintage Retro Kitchen Set. Complete, $1,200. Call Sloane." She wasn't just renovating. She was stripping my house for parts and selling them, and she was charging me the storage fee to hold the inventory while she looked for a buyer. I took a photo of the sign. I took a photo of the unit number. I took a photo of the lock the manager had just cut. "Do you want a new lock?" the manager asked. "No," I said. "Leave it open. I am emptying it today." I didn't empty it. I didn't have a truck. But I knew one thing. Sloan wasn't doing this for me. She was running a liquidation sale on my life. I drove straight to the job site, or rather, my home, though it felt less like mine every hour. Miles Rourke was in the driveway, loading a table saw into his truck. He looked nervous when he saw me pull in. "Miles," I said, getting out of the car. "We need to talk." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "Look, Ms. Parker, I got your text. We stopped work. I'm just packing up the tools." "You said you had an email authorization," I said, walking up to him. "But you are a professional. You have been in business in this county for 20 years. Did it never occur to you to pick up the phone when the homeowner was allegedly out of town and spending $40,000? Miles looked down at his boots. He kicked a piece of gravel. "It felt weird," he admitted quietly. "Usually, people want to talk. They want to ask about the schedule. But Sloan, she was so insistent, and the money was there. She handed me that cashier's check. And, well, work has been slow this season." I guess I didn't want to ask too many questions in case the answer was stop. "You prioritized your cash flow over my consent," I said. "I am sorry," he said. It sounded genuine, but it didn't put my kitchen back together. "I can give you the supplier list. I can show you exactly what was ordered. But I can't refund the labor for the demo. My guys already did the work." "I am not asking for a refund yet," I said. "I am asking for the truth. Did you pull permits for the plumbing and electrical work?" Miles went still. He looked at the house, then back at me. "Sloan said she would handle the permits. She said she had a friend at the county office. She told me the paperwork was filed and the placard was in the mail." My stomach dropped. "And you didn't check?" "She is your sister," he said weakly. "I figured she wouldn't lie about something that could get the job red-tagged." "You figured wrong," I said. The county permit office was a fluorescent-lit purgatory of forms and waiting lines. When I finally got to the counter, the clerk typed my address into the system. "Parker, Pine Hollow Road," she muttered. "I see a permit for a deck replacement in 2015. Nothing recent." "Nothing for a kitchen remodel?" I asked. "Electrical? Plumbing?" "No. Ma'am," she turned the screen toward me. "If you have opened up walls and moved water lines without a permit, you are looking at a stop work order. You will have to tear out any new work so we can inspect the rough-in, and the fines start at $500 per day for unpermitted construction." I closed my eyes. "Thank you." I walked out to my car. Sloan hadn't just exposed me to theft. She had exposed me to liability. If a pipe burst and flooded the foundation, my insurance wouldn't pay a dime because the work was illegal. If the electrical wiring was faulty and the house burned down, I would be destitute. She was playing Russian roulette with my future, and she was doing it with a smile on her face. The family dinner was scheduled for 7 o'clock. It was my father's 65th birthday. The location was my parents' house, a sprawling ranch-style home in the valley that always smelled of potpourri and unspoken resentment. I debated not going. I wanted to stay in my cold, broken cabin and guard it with a baseball bat. But if I didn't go, Sloan would have the floor. She would spin the story, paint the picture, and by the time I spoke to my parents next, I would be the villain who abandoned the family. I put on a dress. I put on makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes. I drove down the mountain. When I walked into the dining room, Sloan was already pouring wine. She had changed out of her work clothes into a soft, floral dress. She looked angelic. She was laughing at something my father said, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "There she is." My mother, Raina, cried from the kitchen doorway. "The homeowner!" The air in the room shifted. Sloan looked up, her expression a perfect mix of wariness and forgiveness. "Hi, Willow," she said softly. I poured you a glass of Cabernet. I took the glass, but didn't drink. I kissed my father on the cheek. Happy birthday, Dad. Grant Parker was a man of few words, mostly because my mother and Sloane rarely left room for them. He patted my hand. Thanks, kid. Good to see you. We sat down. The roast beef was dry. The conversation was brittle. So, Raina said, passing the potatoes. Sloane tells us you two are collaborating on the cabin. It is so wonderful to see you working together. I always said you two would make a great team. I set my fork down. The metal clinked loudly against the china. We are not collaborating. Mom. Sloane broke into my house. The table went silent. Sloane let out a small, wounded gasp. Willow, please, Sloane whispered. Not tonight. It is Dad's birthday. You are right, I said, my voice steady. It is Dad's birthday. But you are telling them a lie. You didn't collaborate. You moved in while I was away. You forged my signature on a contract. You didn't pull permits, which means the county can fine me thousands of dollars. And today I found out you are trying to sell my old cabinets and pocket the money. Raina looked at Sloane, then back at me. Her face hardened. Willow, that is enough. Your sister is trying to do something nice for you. Why do you always have to look for the negative? She told us you invited her to manage the project because you were overwhelmed with work. I never invited her, I said. I have the emails she faked. I have the bank records. I looked at my father. Dad, she stole $5,000 from me. She opened a credit card in my name. Grant Parker looked at his plate. He cut a piece of beef with slow, deliberate sawing motions. He didn't look up. He didn't look at Sloane. He didn't look at me. Grant? My mother prompted, looking for backup. Let's just have a nice dinner, my father said to the meat. Work it out between you girls. No need to ruin the evening. I felt a crack form in my chest. It wasn't a breaking heart. It was the breaking of an illusion. I had always thought my father was the neutral party, the Switzerland of the Parker family. But silence wasn't neutrality. Silence was an endorsement of the loudest person in the room. By saying nothing, he was giving Sloane permission to keep devouring me. I can't work it out, I said. This isn't a squabble. It is a crime. Oh, stop using that word, Raina snapped. You are sisters. You share. Sloane gave up 2 years of her life to help us when your father's business was struggling. She made sacrifices. Now that you are successful, it is your turn to help her. I froze. What sacrifices? When she came back from college, Raina said. In '99. She stayed home to help run the office. She didn't take that job in New York because we needed her. Sloane was staring at her wine glass, her knuckles white. 99? I asked. I thought she was in California in '99. No, she was here, Raina insisted. Helping us. I stood up. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. I walked out of the dining room. I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to the den, where the wall of photo albums lived. My mother was the family archivist. She documented everything. I pulled down the album labeled 1998 to 2000. I flipped through the pages. Christmas 1998. Easter 1999. There were no photos of Sloane. I found a postcard tucked into the back of the album. It was postmarked June 1999. It was from San Diego. Hey, Mom and Dad. Beach life is amazing. Still looking for a job, but Evan says his startup is going to take off soon. Send money if you can. Love, Sloane, Evan. I flipped forward. Christmas, 1999. Sloane was there, tan and blonde, wearing a sundress in December. I did the math. The business failed in early 2000. Sloane hadn't been here helping. She had been in California with some guy named Evan, asking for money. The narrative that she had sacrificed her career for the family was a lie, a myth constructed to explain why she never launched, why she always needed help, why she was entitled to our support. She hadn't saved the family. The family had been funding her failures for 20 years and calling it gratitude. I put the album back. I didn't go back to the table. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove away. When I got back to the cabin, the lights were off. Sloane's car was gone. I let myself in. Locking the door behind me, I felt exhausted, hollowed out by the dinner and the revelation in the den. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Lila, the neighbor. Lila. Hey, I saw you leave earlier. I checked my security cam to see if anyone came by while you were gone. Sending you the clip, a video file loaded. It was grainy, shot from Lila's porch across the road. The timestamp was 11:42 p.m., 2 nights ago. Sloane was standing on my porch. A car pulled up. Not the blue SUV, and not the realtor's Lexus. It was a battered sedan. A man got out. He was tall, wearing a hoodie. He walked up the steps. I turned the volume up. The wind distorted the audio, but I could hear voices. I need it. Sloane, the man said. His voice was aggressive, tight. I am working on it, Sloane's voice replied. She sounded scared. I am flipping the kitchen. It will add value. I can get a loan against the equity once it is appraised. You don't have time for a flip, the man said. I have people breathing down my neck. You said you had access to family money. I do? Sloane hissed. My sister is passive. I can move funds. Just give me 2 weeks. The man grabbed her arm. I flinched, watching the screen. 1 week, or I talk to your dad, and I tell him where the money actually went. He released her, walked back to the car, and drove off. I stared at the frozen image of the man's back. This wasn't Evan. This was someone new. Or maybe Evan was the one sending him. I can move funds, she had said. My sister is passive. I dropped the phone on the couch. The cold air of the cabin seemed to seep into my bones. This wasn't just about entitlement anymore. It wasn't just about a jealous sister trying to play house. Sloane was in trouble, deep, dangerous trouble, and she was using my house, my credit, and my identity as a shield to protect herself from whatever was coming for her. She was cannibalizing me to pay a debt I didn't owe. I walked to the kitchen. I looked at the spot where the island was supposed to be. I thought about my father's silence. I thought about my mother's delusion. They wouldn't help me. They couldn't. They were trapped in the same web of lies, convinced that saving Sloane was a moral duty rather than a never-ending ransom payment. I was the only one who saw the truth, and if I wanted to survive this, I had to stop being the passive sister. I had to stop being the daughter who wanted to keep the peace. I opened my laptop. I created a new folder. Evidence. I dragged the photo of the storage unit sign into it. I dragged the permit search results. I dragged the scan of the fake email. And finally, I saved the video clip from Lila. I wasn't going to plead for understanding anymore. I wasn't going to write letters about boundaries. I was going to build a case. I was going to prosecute my own sister. The wind howled outside, slamming against the A-frame, but inside, I was perfectly still. The project manager in me had finally taken full control. The timeline was set, the budget was zero, and the objective was total separation. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in the cabin. Outside, the wind had picked up, whistling through the gaps where the kitchen insulation used to be. A high, lonely sound that felt like the house itself was crying. I sat cross-legged on the floor, wrapped in a wool blanket, staring at the website for the National Credit Bureau. I clicked freeze. A pop-up window appeared, asking me to confirm. I clicked yes. It was a small digital action, barely a movement of my index finger, but it felt like slamming a heavy iron gate shut. For the first time in my life, I was locking the perimeter not against strangers, but against the people who shared my last name. I opened a new tab, the local police department's non-emergency reporting portal. I selected identity theft from the drop-down menu when the form asked for the suspect's name. My fingers hovered over the keys. I could type Sloane Parker. I could end this right now with a specific accusation that would send a deputy to her apartment in the city, but I hesitated, not out of loyalty, but out of strategy. If I named her, the police would likely dismiss it as a civil matter between sisters. They would tell me to take it to small claims court. I needed this to be a crime, objectively and undeniably. I typed, Unknown unauthorized individual. In the description box, I wrote, identity used to open credit line at high altitude lending. Identity used to authorize construction contract with Rourke Construction. Forged signature on work order. Unauthorized access to personal bank accounts. I hit submit. The screen flashed green. Report number 2024-899. I wrote the number down on a sticky note and stuck it to my laptop bezel. It was real now. It wasn't just a family squabble. It was a case number. The next morning, I met Dana Keene at her office to sign the papers she had drafted. She handed me a heavy envelope. "This is the notice to vacate," she said, her voice clipped and professional. "And this is the demand for reimbursement. It outlines the $5,000 in stolen funds, the unauthorized credit inquiries, and the cost of the demolition damage." "It looks severe," I said, reading the legal jargon. "Pursuant to Colorado statute. Immediate possession. Treble damages." "It is supposed to," Dana said. "Willow, you need to understand something. Your sister isn't responding to your feelings. She is responding to your lack of consequences. We have to change the physics of the situation. She needs to feel the wall before she stops running." "I want to send a copy to my parents," I said. Dana looked over her glasses at me. "Tactically, that is smart. It removes her ability to triage the narrative, but emotionally, that is a nuclear option." "They are already involved," I said, thinking of the dinner, of my father's silence, of my mother's rewriting of history. "They are funding her delusions with their denial. I want them to see the bill." I scanned the documents into a PDF. I opened my email client. To Sloan Parker at email.com. C. Raina Parker at email.com. Grant Parker at email.com. Subject, official legal notice, immediate action required. I attached the files. I didn't write a long, emotional body text. I just wrote, "Please see attached legal notices regarding the unauthorized occupation and damage to the property at 442 Ridge Road. Hard copies have been sent via certified mail." I hit send. Then I drove to the cabin. I used a staple gun this time. I stapled the notice to vacate to the front door. Right over the peephole, the loud thwack, thwack, thwack of the staples into the wood echoed off the trees. I was inside, sweeping up drywall dust. When my phone blew up, it wasn't a call. It was a barrage of texts from Sloan. "Sloan, are you insane? Sloan, you sent this to Mom and Dad? Sloan, you are humiliating me. Sloan, pick up the phone." I didn't pick up. I kept sweeping. The rhythm of the broom against the subfloor was soothing. Sweep, push, clear. 10 minutes later, the blue SUV screeched into the driveway. I didn't unlock the door. I stood by the window and watched her jump out. She was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, her hair messy. She ran up to the porch and ripped the paper off the door, leaving shreds of white trapped under the staples. She pounded on the glass. "Willow, open this door." I walked to the door but didn't open it. I spoke through the glass. "You can't come in. Sloan, read the notice." "I am not reading your stupid lawyer letter," she screamed. "You seed Mom. She is hyperventilating. Willow, do you know what you did to her blood pressure?" "I CC'd the people who claim this is a family matter," I said loudly, my voice muffled by the double-paned glass. "If it is a family matter, the family should see the paperwork." Sloan stopped pounding. She pressed her forehead against the glass, closing her eyes. When she opened them, the rage was gone, replaced by a desperate, wheedling look that I recognized as her secondary weapon, the bargain. "Okay," she said, her voice raising to be heard. "Okay, fine. You are angry. I get it. I overstepped. But listen to me. I have a compromise." I crossed my arms. "I am listening. Let me stay," she said. "Just for 2 weeks. Let me finish the kitchen. I will do the labor myself. I will get the cabinets installed. And once it is done, I will pay you back. Every cent. The $5,000. The credit card. Everything. But I can only pay you back if I can finish the project." I stared at her. Why? Because of the equity, she said, too quickly. I need to show the finished product to get the loan to pay you back. It is a bridge loan. I just need a finished asset to collateralize it. So your repayment is contingent on me letting you continue to violate my boundaries, I said. That is not a compromise. Sloan, that is a hostage negotiation. It is the only way you are going to get your money, she shouted, losing her cool again. I don't have $5,000 sitting in a bank account. Willow, if you kick me out now, you get nothing. You get a broken kitchen and $0. If you let me stay, you get a dream kitchen and full restitution. Don't be an idiot. Do the math. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was vibrating with anxiety. This wasn't about equity. This was about survival. She needed to be in this house. She needed to be seen doing something here. I did the math, I said. The answer is no. You have 48 hours to remove your things. I turned and walked away from the door. She pounded for another 5 minutes, screaming insults, calling me a traitor, a miser, a bitter spinster. Then she got in her car and peeled out. Gravel sprang against the siding. I needed to understand how she had done it. The money transfer. The sheer mechanics of the theft gnawed at me. I called the support line for the freelance design platform where I did my side hustle work. I spent 20 minutes on hold, listening to elevator jazz, before a human agent came on the line. I need to report unauthorized access to my account, I told him. My banking details were changed. Okay, let me look at the logs, the agent said. I see the change was made on Tuesday. The user logged in from a new device, so they were prompted to answer security questions. What questions? I asked. Standard recovery questions, he said. City where you were born, and name of your first pet. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. And they answered them correctly? Yes, ma'am. First try. I closed my eyes. Denver, Sparky. Sparky was a golden retriever we had when I was 6. Sloan was 10. She used to brush him for hours. We buried him together in the backyard under the lilac bush. It was a core memory, a shared piece of our childhood. She had used that memory, that intimate, innocent piece of our shared history, to bypass a security firewall and steal my rent money. It felt more violative than if she had hacked my password. She had weaponized our sisterhood. She had taken the things I told her in the dark when we were kids and turned them into keys to rob me. Reset everything, I told the agent, my voice thick. And enable 2-factor authentication. Text message only. Later that afternoon, Miles Rourke's truck pulled into the driveway. He didn't get out immediately. He sat in the cab for a long time, looking at the house. Finally, he emerged, carrying a thick folder. I met him on the porch. I got your letter, he said, or the copy you sent to my office. I am sorry to involve you, Miles, I said, but I need a clear record. I get it, he said. He looked tired. Look, I went through the financials again. I wanted to show you exactly where the money went. I don't want you thinking I was padding the bill. He opened the folder. Here's the receipt for the appliance package. A Wolf range, a Sub-Zero fridge, and a Bosch dishwasher. High-end stuff. Total cost was $18,000. I never authorized that, I said. I can't afford that. I know, Miles said. But here's the thing. Sloan put down a deposit to hold the order, $3,000. He handed me a photocopy of a cashier's check. I looked at the date. It was purchased the morning after I left for Seattle, the morning after she broke into my lockbox. She paid with a cashier's check, Miles said. But the teller at the bank, she is my cousin. I asked her about it this morning. She remembers Sloan. She said Sloan came in with a stack of $100 bills, musty ones, like they had been sitting in a box. My emergency fund, the cash I had saved, bill by bill, over 3 years. She hadn't just reallocated it as she claimed. She had used it to put a down payment on a stove I couldn't afford, to create the illusion of a luxury renovation. Miles, I said, where are the appliances now? They are not here, he said. The order is on hold at the warehouse because the balance wasn't paid, but the deposit, it is non-refundable. So she took my $3,000, I said slowly, and turned it into a piece of paper that is now worthless. Basically, Miles said, unless you pay the other $15,000 to release the units. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. I don't have $15,000. Miles, Sloan stole what I had. Miles shifted his weight. There is one other thing. The email chain. The one from the fake account? I kept reading it. There was a message from last week. She told me to keep the invoices under $10,000 each. She said, let's keep the costs just under the amount that triggers extra documentation. Structuring, I said. She was trying to avoid the bank asking questions. She knew what she was doing, Willow, Miles said. This wasn't just enthusiasm. It was a plan. I went back inside and pulled up the video clip Lila had sent me. The man in the hoodie, Evan. My mother had mentioned him at dinner, the boyfriend from California, the startup guy. The reason Sloan had sacrificed her career in 1999, which I now knew was a lie. I texted Sloan, me. I know who Evan Klein is. The response was immediate. The 3 dots bubbled for a long time. Then her phone started ringing. I answered. Who told you that name? She demanded. Her voice was brittle, stripped of the charm she usually coated it with. Mom did, I said, accidentally, and then I did some digging. He was your partner in that boutique you tried to open in San Diego, wasn't he? The one that went under in 2000. That was a lifetime ago, she snapped. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this, I said. Because he was on my porch 2 nights ago. Sloan, Lila's camera caught him. He threatened you. He said you had 1 week to pay him. Silence. Heavy, breathing silence. Sloan, I said, my voice dropping. Is the remodel for him? Are you trying to flip my house to pay off an old debt? It is not an old debt, she whispered. Her voice broke. It got reactivated. I tried to start a new thing last year, an online store. Evan fronted the inventory costs. It didn't work out. The supply chain. Everything got stuck. I owe him money. A lot of money. How much? 40,000. I felt the number like a physical blow. 40,000. The exact amount of the renovation budget she had faked. So you were going to use my credit, I said, to increase the value of my house, so you could take out a loan against my equity to pay back your ex-boyfriend. I was going to pay you back, she cried. The market is hot, Willow. If we added the chef's kitchen, the appraisal would have jumped by 60,000. I could have cashed out the difference, paid Evan, and you would have had a free kitchen. It was a victimless crime. It wasn't victimless, I shouted. I am the victim. My credit is frozen. My savings are gone. My home is a wreck. And you brought a man who threatens people to my doorstep. He won't hurt you, she said quickly. He just wants his money. Willow, please, you have to help me. If I don't pay him by Friday, he is going to tell Dad. He is going to tell everyone about the business failure. He is going to sue me. Let him sue you, I said. I can't, she sobbed. I can't be the failure again. Dad thinks I am finally doing well. Mom thinks I am a success. If they find out I am 40,000 in the hole, it will kill them. So you decided to kill me instead, I said. No, I was saving us both. I took a deep breath. I looked around my broken cabin. Despite everything, despite the theft, the lies, the manipulation, she was still my sister, and she was terrified. I will make you an offer, I said. A humane option, because unlike you, I don't want to destroy family. Okay, she sniffed. Okay, what? You move out. Today. You return the keys. You sign a document admitting that you owe me the $5,000 plus the damages, and in exchange, I will pay for 1 month of a rental for you in town, a cheap one, and I will help you find a debt counselor to negotiate with Evan. We will face him together, legally. We tell Dad the truth. Together. Tell Dad? Her voice went high. No, no way. I can't tell Dad. That is the condition. Sloan, truth and accountability. I will help you with the debt, but I won't help you with the lie. You just want to see me humiliated, she spat, the vulnerability vanishing instantly. You want to stand there and watch me crawl. You want to be the golden child for once? I want to be your sister, not your bank, I said. Take the deal. No, she said. I am not signing anything, and I am not telling Dad. You owe me, Willow. You owe me loyalty. After everything I did for you growing up, you are going to let a stranger hurt me over money? You are the stranger. Sloan, I said. I hung up. 20 minutes later, my mother called. I knew it was coming, but it still made my stomach clench. Willow Parker. Raina's voice was a low tremble. I just opened my email. What is this? It is a legal notice. Mom, you are evicting your sister? You are demanding damages? From family? She stole from me. Mom, she admitted it. She owes a loan shark $40,000 and she was trying to use my house to pay it off. Loan shark? Raina scoffed. You are being hysterical. Sloan told me about Evan. He is an investor. She had a liquidity issue. It happens in business. Why do you have to make everything so sordid? Because she forged my signature, I yelled, finally losing my composure. She used the name of my dead dog to hack my bank account. Mom, she is a criminal. She is desperate, Raina shouted back. And you are sitting up there in your house, with your steady job and your savings, judging her. You have so much. Willow, would it bankrupt you to help her? Would it destroy you to just sign the loan papers and get her out of trouble? Yes, I said. It would. It would destroy my credit, my boundaries, and my self-respect. Self-respect, Raina sneered. Is that what you call this? Calling lawyers on your own blood? I raised you better than this. I raised you to love your family. Love without respect is not love, Mom, I said. The words came out with a clarity that startled me. It was the truth I'd been hiding from for 30 years. It is just consumption. You don't want me to love Sloan. You want me to let her eat me alive so you don't have to deal with her mess. How dare you? Raina whispered. I am done being the fixer, I said. And I am done being the quiet one. Read the email, Mom. Read the attachments, because that is the reality, whether you choose to believe it or not. I didn't hang up this time. I waited. If you go through with this, Raina said, her voice cold and hard, do not expect us at Christmas. Do not expect us for your birthday. You are choosing your money over your mother. I am choosing myself, I said. The line went dead. I sat in the silence for a long time. I felt lighter. Strangely, the cord had been cut. It was painful, like a phantom limb. But the constant dragging weight was gone. I went back to the paperwork. I needed to finish the audit. I pulled up the credit report again. I noticed a line item I had missed before because it wasn't a bank loan. It was a store credit card. Home Depot. Opened 5 days ago. Balance? 0. That didn't make sense. If she had opened it, why wasn't there a balance? She had been buying materials. I logged into the store's portal using the forgot password feature. Since the account was in my name, the reset link came to my email. I looked at the transaction history. Purchase? Cabinetry package, $4,000. October 24th. Return. Cabinetry package, $4,000. October 25th. Purchase. Lighting fixtures, $800. October 26th. Return. Lighting fixtures, $800. October 26th. I clicked on the return details. Refund method. Cash. She was running a refund scam. She was buying materials on the credit card opened in my name, taking the physical items out of the store, turning right around and returning them, likely at a different branch, and asking for the refund in cash. She was washing the credit line, turning my credit score into cold. Hard cash to pay Evan. The cabinets in the storage unit. She hadn't paid for those. She had probably bought a second set, returned them, kept the cash, and stored the old ones to sell. It was a churning machine of fraud. I printed the transaction log. I picked up my phone and called Dana. "I found more," I said. "It is grand larceny at this point." "Okay," Dana said. "We need to escalate." "I want a walkthrough," I said. "I want Sloan there. I want Miles there. I want you there. And I want the county inspector." "Why the inspector?" Dana asked. "Because Sloan keeps telling my parents this is an upgrade," I said. "She keeps selling the vision of the chef's kitchen. I want an official, government-stamped document stating that the house is uninhabitable and illegal. I want the truth to be witnessed. That is a confrontation." "Willow," Dana warned, "if we do that, there is no going back." "We passed the point of no return when she used Sparky's name to steal my paycheck," I said. "Set it up. Tomorrow morning. Tell her if she doesn't show. The police report gets filed immediately." "She will show," Dana said. "She will think she can talk her way out of it." "Let her think that," I said. I looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the snow. I felt a cold, grim determination settling in my chest. Sloan was a storyteller. She had spent her whole life weaving narratives that made her the hero and me the supporting character. But tomorrow, we weren't going to tell stories. We were going to look at the foundation, and when the rot was exposed, I was going to make sure everyone saw it. The morning of the walkthrough was cold, the kind of biting, high-altitude chill that seeped through layers of wool and settled directly into the marrow. I sat in my car at the bottom of the driveway, waiting for my team to assemble. I felt less like a homeowner and more like a general preparing for a siege. Dana Keene pulled up first in a sensible station wagon. She stepped out carrying a briefcase that looked heavy enough to bludgeon someone. A moment later, a county truck arrived. The inspector, a man named Mr. Henderson with a clipboard and a face carved from granite, nodded to me. "Ms. Parker?" he asked. "You requested the code compliance review?" "I did," I said. "Thank you for coming on short notice." "I see the dumpster," he said, eyeing the orange monstrosity. "Let's see what we are dealing with." We walked up the driveway together. The blue SUV and my parents' sedan were already there. I had invited them. I wanted witnesses. I wanted the people who had gaslit me for 3 decades to stand in the room and look at the physical evidence of Sloane's love. When I opened the front door, the smell of fresh coffee hit me. Sloane had been busy. She had staged the construction zone. There was a folding table set up in the center of the gutted kitchen. Covered in a white tablecloth, on it sat a pot of coffee, a plate of pastries, and a large foam core presentation board. Pinned to the board were color swatches, fabric samples, and glossy printouts of high-end appliances. In the center was a collage of photos. Me and Sloane as children, laughing on a swing set, a photo of the cabin from the listing, and a rendering of a finished kitchen. Scrawled across the top in cheerful looping marker was, "The Parker Sisters Project, Building Dreams Together," and on the counter, or what was left of it, sat a framed note. "We did this together." I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to grip the doorframe. It wasn't just a lie. It was a rewriting of reality so bold it was almost psychotic. She was trying to override the legal notices and the police reports with a mood board. She was trying to force the happy family narrative onto a crime scene. Sloane stepped out from the hallway. She was wearing a blazer and jeans, looking every inch the capable project manager. My parents, Grant and Raina, stood behind her. My mother looked anxious, twisting her rings. My father looked at the floor. "Good morning," Sloane chirped, though her eyes were darting nervously toward Dana and the inspector. "I thought we could start with some coffee and a review of the design vision before we get into the boring technical stuff." "This isn't a design meeting." "Sloane," I said, my voice flat. "This is an inspection." "Ms. Parker," Mr. Henderson said, stepping past Sloane as if she were a piece of furniture. "I am going to need access to the panel and the rough plumbing." Sloane's smile faltered. "Oh, well, Surely we can look at the finishes first. I have the marble samples. I am not here for marble, Henderson said. He walked into the kitchen wreckage. He took a flashlight from his belt and shined it into the open wall cavity where the sink used to be. He let out a low whistle. "Who did this plumbing?" he asked. "My contractor," Sloan said quickly. "He is very experienced. He is not a licensed plumber if he used PVC for the supply lines," Henderson said. He ripped a piece of red tape from a roll in his pocket and slapped it onto the pipe. "That is a code violation. Illegal material. Fire hazard." He moved to the electrical outlet where the stove had been. He unscrewed the faceplate and peered inside. No ground wire, and they have tied a 20-amp circuit into a 15-amp breaker. If you turned on a modern range, you would melt the wiring in the walls. Who authorized this? "It is a work in progress," Sloan said, her voice rising. "We are fixing it." "You are not fixing it," Henderson said, marking the wall with another piece of red tape. "You are creating a death trap. There are no permits on file for this address, no electrical, no plumbing, no structural. This is an unpermitted remodel." He turned to me. "Ms. Parker, I am issuing a stop work order immediately. You will need to hire a licensed remediation crew to tear all of this out. You have to expose the framing so we can inspect the rough-in. If the load-bearing studs were compromised when they removed the cabinets, and it looks like they might have been, you are looking at structural reinforcement. You cannot live here until this is cleared. I am red-tagging the building." The silence that followed was absolute. The wind howled outside, rattling the single-pane windows. "Tear it out?" my mother whispered. "But it looks so promising." "It is illegal, Mrs. Parker," Dana said, stepping forward. "And now, it is a matter of public record." Miles Rourke appeared in the doorway then. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. He took off his hat and squeezed it in his hands. "Miles," Sloan said, a sharp warning in her tone. "Tell them it is fine. Tell them we were filing the permits next week." Miles didn't look at her. He looked at me. "I can't do that, Sloan." He walked over to the folding table and placed a stack of papers on top of the Building Dreams Together mood board. "I pulled the full email history," Miles said, his voice shaking. "I wanted to be clear about why I didn't file the permits." He picked up a sheet of paper. "October 22nd, from the fake Willow account. Subject, permits. Text, don't bother with the county. I don't want the tax assessment to go up. Just keep it quiet. We are doing this under the radar." He picked up another sheet. "And this one, regarding the invoices, keep the billing under $10,000 per cycle. I don't want to trigger any extra documentation at the bank." My father's head snapped up. "Structuring," he muttered. It was the first time he had spoken. As a former business owner, he knew exactly what that meant. It was federal banking fraud. "I didn't write those," Sloan screamed. "He is lying. He is trying to cover his own ass because he did a bad job." "The IP address matches your phone, Sloan," I said quietly. "I already checked with the provider." Dana stepped into the center of the room. She was small, but she held the space with the gravity of a judge. "Sloan," Dana said, "we are looking at criminal trespass, malicious mischief in the first degree, identity theft, forgery, and now, banking fraud. Willow has already filed the police report for the identity theft. The credit freeze is active. If you do not vacate this property today, and if you do not agree to a restitution plan, the district attorney will be receiving this entire file by 5 o'clock. Sloan looked at Dana, then at Miles, then at our parents. Her bravado, usually so bulletproof, began to crack. Her face crumpled, not into sadness, but into a vicious, cornered sneer. "You are loving this, aren't you?" she spat, turning on me. "Look at you, standing there with your lawyer and your inspector. You think you are so important." "I think I am the victim of a crime," I said. "You are a victim of your own selfishness," she yelled. "You have always been embarrassed by us. That is what this is. You bought this cabin to get away from us. You hoard your money. You hoard your life, and when I try to bring something beautiful into it, you call the police. You are heartless. Willow, you are a cold, unfeeling robot. Sloane, stop, my mother said, but her voice was weak. She was looking at the red tape on the walls, her eyes wide with confusion. No, Mom, look at her. Sloane gestured to me. She is humiliating me in front of strangers. She wants to see me in jail. What kind of sister does that? I did this for us. I wanted us to have a place. You did it for the equity, I said. Sloane froze. You did it because you owe Evan Klein $40,000, I continued. And you needed to flip this house to pay him back. Who is Evan Klein? My father asked. Before Sloane could answer, the front door opened. It wasn't locked. We had all walked in and left it unlatched. A man stood there. He was wearing a dark parka and boots that were muddy from the slush outside. He wasn't physically imposing. He looked like a tired accountant. But the energy he brought into the room was heavy and suffocating. It was the man from the security video. Sloane, he said. His voice was calm, conversational, which made it terrifying. Sloane went white. She took a step back, bumping into the table. The coffee pot rattled. Evan, she whispered, what are you doing here? I saw the cars, Evan said. He stepped inside, ignoring the rest of us. He looked around the gutted kitchen. He looked at the red tape. He looked at the mood board. He laughed, a short, dry bark of a sound. It is not done, he said. It is... There were delays, Sloane stammered. The inspector. We hit a snag, but it is fine. It is just a paperwork thing. You told me it was listing on Monday, Evan said. You told me you had a buyer lined up. I do? Sloane lied. I need another week. Evan shook his head. I don't have a week. Sloane, my investors don't have a week. He turned to look at me. He had cold, pale eyes. You must be the sister, the passive one. I am the owner, I said, stepping forward. And you are trespassing. I am a creditor, Evan said. Your sister signed a promissory note. She put this property up as collateral. She can't collateralize a property she doesn't own, Dana cut in sharply. Any lien you attempt to place on this home is void ab initio, and if you are threatening her, that is extortion. Evan looked at Dana, then back to Sloane. He didn't seem impressed by the legal vocabulary. He seemed like a man who operated in rooms where lawyers didn't go. I don't care about the deed, Evan said to Sloane. I care about my $40,000. You took the inventory. You sold it. You kept the cash. That is theft. Sloane. I put it into the house, Sloane cried, gesturing to the ruins. I bought appliances. I paid the contractor. I was trying to grow the money to pay you back with interest. Well, Evan said, looking at the capped pipes, it looks like you buried my money in a hole. He took a step toward her. I want a check. Today. I don't care where it comes from. I don't care if you have to beg your rich sister or your daddy, but I am not leaving this mountain without my money. The room shrank. The air felt thin. This wasn't a family drama anymore. This was danger, real, physical danger. Sloane wasn't just a manipulator. She was a woman who had stolen from dangerous people and led them straight to my sanctuary. My father cleared his throat. Grant Parker stepped forward. He looked old. His shoulders were slumped, his face gray. He looked at Evan, then at Sloane, who was trembling like a leaf. Then he looked at me. Willow, he said. No, I said. I knew what was coming. I could feel it in the air like static electricity. Willow, look at this mess, my father said softly. This man, he is serious. Sloane is in trouble. Sloane put herself in trouble, I said. She is your sister, Grant said. We can't let, whatever this has happened, we can't have police and thugs involved. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his checkbook, but he didn't open it. He looked at me with pleading, watery eyes. I can't cover $40,000, he said. The retirement accounts are fixed. I can't access them without a penalty. But you have the savings. You have the credit. Dad, I whispered. Just pay him, Grant said. Pay him the $40,000. We will work it out later. We will make a payment plan. Just make him go away. Willow, fix this. The silence that followed was louder than the wind, louder than Sloane's sobbing. It was the sound of my heart finally hardening into stone. He didn't ask Sloane to sell her car. He didn't offer to sell his own car. He turned to me, the one who had been robbed, impersonated, and violated, and asked me to pay the robber to save the thief. You want me to pay him? I asked, my voice trembling with a rage I had suppressed for 30 years. You want me to write a check to a loan shark for a debt Sloane created by stealing from him, after she already stole $5,000 from me? It is to save the family, my mother interjected, clutching her purse. Willow, please, don't be stubborn. People could get hurt. I am already hurt, I screamed. I am standing in my ruined house. My credit is frozen. My identity was stolen, and you are asking me to pay for the privilege. I turned to Evan. I am not paying you, I said. Not a dime. Evan's eyes narrowed. Then I guess I take it out of... I have a deputy sheriff on speed dial, I said, holding up my phone. My attorney is standing right here. You are trespassing on private property. If you are not in your car in 30 seconds, I am pressing charges for extortion and trespassing. And since you just admitted to an illegal lending scheme in front of a county official, I imagine the DA would love to have a chat. I looked at Sloane. And I will give them everything. The emails, the bank records, the inventory lists. I will help them build the case against both of you. Evan looked at me. He looked at the phone. He looked at Dana, who was already typing on her own phone. He did the math. He realized that Sloane had lied to him, too. She had told him I was passive. She had told him I was weak. You lied to me, Sloane, Evan said. He pointed a finger at her face. This isn't over. You better find another way. He turned and walked out the door. We heard his car start, the engine revving aggressively, and then the sound of tires crunching away down the mountain. Sloane collapsed into the chair, sobbing into her hands. He is going to kill me. He is going to kill me. He isn't going to kill you, Dana said coldly, but he is certainly going to sue you. Willow, my father said, his voice shaking with anger now. How could you do that? You put your sister in danger. You provoked him. I protected my home, I said, which is more than you did. I looked at my parents. They were huddled around Sloane, stroking her hair, murmuring comforts. It's okay. We'll figure it out. She's just upset. They were doing it again, even now, with the wreckage of my life all around them. They were comforting the arsonist and blaming the fire department. Get out, I said. My mother looked up. Willow, we can't leave her like this. Get out of my house, I said. All of you, take Sloane, take her mood boards, take her lies, and get off my property. You are making a mistake, Grant said. If you kick us out now, you are on your own. I have been on my own my whole life, I said. I just finally realized it. Come on, Raina said to Sloane, helping her stand. Let's go home. We don't need to stay where we aren't wanted. Sloane stood up. She looked at me, her face streaked with mascara. I hate you, she whispered. I tried to give you something nice. You tried to give me your debt, I said. They walked out. My father paused at the door, looking back at me, waiting for me to break, to apologize, to call them back. I stared at him until he turned away. The door closed. I stood in the silence. The inspector cleared his throat. I'm going to need to post the placard on the window, he said gently. You have 30 days to submit a remediation plan. I will, I said. I will walk you out, Dana said to the inspector. She squeezed my arm as she passed. You did good. Willow, breathe. They left. Miles had already vanished. Slipping out the back door during the confrontation, I was alone. I looked at the kitchen. The red tape on the walls looked like wounds. The note on the counter, "We did this together," was still there. I picked it up. I walked to the trash bag Miles had left in the corner. I dropped the frame into the bag. The glass shattered. I couldn't stay here tonight. The front door lock was compromised. Sloane still had the code. And Evan knew where I lived. The house had been violated. It felt unsafe, tainted by the desperation that had played out in this room. I packed a bag. I grabbed my laptop, my hard drive with the evidence, and the folder of documents. I locked the door. Though it felt futile. I got in my car and drove down the mountain. I checked into a motel 3 towns over, under a fake name. I sat on the edge of the bed, the neon light from the sign outside flickering through the curtains. My phone was silent. No texts from Mom, no calls from Dad. They were probably at home, huddled around the kitchen table, rewriting the story of tonight. In their version, I was the villain. I was the one who refused to help. I was the one who sent a dangerous man after Sloane. I felt a phantom pain in my chest, a deep, aching grief for the family I had lost. But beneath the grief, there was something else. Relief. The worst had happened. The secret was out. The confrontation was over. And I was still standing. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the email to the district attorney that Dana had drafted. I attached the inspector's report. I attached the police report number. I attached the video of Evan. My father had told me to fix it. He had told me to pay the price for peace. I looked at the cursor blinking on the send button. I wasn't going to fix it. I was going to finish it. I clicked send. The convoy that rolled up the mountain road the following Tuesday was not a family reunion. It was an eviction squad. I drove the lead car. Behind me was Dana Keene, my attorney. Behind her was a white van marked Pine Hollow Lock Key, and bringing up the rear, lights flashing silently in the gray morning mist, was a county sheriff's cruiser. We parked in a line. The air was crisp, smelling of wet pine and looming snow. I stepped out, clutching a binder against my chest. Inside were the copies of the deed, the police report number, the inspector's red tag notice, and the restraining order Dana had filed the previous afternoon. "Okay," Dana said, stepping out of her car and buttoning her coat. "Let's keep this clinical. Officer Miller is here for a civil standby. His job is to ensure peace while we secure the property. We are not here to negotiate." The deputy, a broad man with a mustache that looked like it had been issued with his badge, nodded. "I will stand by the door. Ms. Parker, you do what you need to do." I walked up the steps. The notice to vacate I had stapled to the door was gone, ripped away, leaving only the rusty staples embedded in the wood like insect bites. I felt a flash of anger, but I pushed it down. Anger was fuel for Sloane. I needed to run on something cleaner. "Go ahead," I told the locksmith. He drilled out the core of the digital lock Sloane had installed. The sound of the drill whining against the metal was the only noise in the clearing. Within 10 minutes, he had installed a heavy-duty deadbolt and a reinforced strike plate. He handed me 2 brass keys. They were cold and heavy in my palm. "Done," he said. "Thank you," I said. We went inside. The cabin was freezing. The wind whistled through the gaps in the kitchen walls where the insulation had been torn out. I walked through the rooms. Sloane's things were still there. Clothes piled on the floor. The mood board in the trash. A half-drunk cup of coffee on the windowsill that had grown a skin of mold. "She didn't pack," Dana observed, looking at the mess. "She didn't believe you would actually do it." "She never believes consequences apply to her," I said. "Because they never have." I heard the sound of an engine roaring up the driveway, not the smooth hum of a well-maintained car, but the desperate, high RPM straining of an engine being pushed too hard. The blue SUV skidded into the gravel, spraying stones against the side of the deputy's cruiser. Sloane jumped out before the car had even stopped rocking. She looked wild. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a severe knot. She was wearing the same clothes she had worn at the walkthrough. "What is this?" she screamed, running toward the porch. "Police? You called the police on me again?" Officer Miller stepped forward, placing his hand on his belt, not on his gun, but just resting there, a visual anchor of authority. "Ma'am, stay back," This is a civil standby. You are here to retrieve your personal effects under supervision. This is my house, Sloane yelled, pointing at the door. I have rights. I have tenancy. You have nothing, Dana said calmly from the porch. You have a notice to vacate that expired 24 hours ago. You are trespassing. We are granting you a 1-hour window to remove your personal items. Anything left after that will be considered abandoned property. Sloane looked at me. Her eyes were rimmed with red, bloodshot and frantic. Willow, please, you can't do this. Evan called me again. He knows where I live now. If I lose this place, if I can't show him I have an asset. You never had an asset. Sloane, I said. You had a delusion. I was fixing it, she cried. I was going to make it perfect. I was going to sell it and pay everyone back. Why can't you see that? I was trying to save us. You were stealing from me, I said. Get your boxes. You have 59 minutes. She didn't move. She stood there, vibrating with a mix of rage and terror. Then, her face changed. The desperation hardened into something uglier, a weaponized bitterness. You think you are so righteous, she spat. You stand there with your job and your savings and your credit score, acting like you are better than me, like you are the responsible one and I am the mess. I am the responsible one, I said. I worked for everything I have. You worked? Sloane laughed. It was a jagged, hysterical sound. You think you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps? You think you got through college on scholarships and waitressing because you were special? I frowned. I did work through college. I worked double shifts at the diner for 4 years. Because there was no money left, Sloane screamed. Because Mom and Dad drained your college fund in 1999 to pay off my first bankruptcy. They used your tuition money to keep me out of jail. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The wind stopped howling. The cold vanished, replaced by a sudden, rushing heat in my ears. What? I whispered. Oh, you didn't know? Sloane sneered, stepping closer, ignoring the deputy's warning hand. You thought they just couldn't afford to send you? They had the money, Willow. They saved for 18 years, $50,000. It was sitting in a trust for you. And then I messed up in San Diego. I owed suppliers. I owed the landlord. I was going to be prosecuted. She was smiling now, a cruel, triumphant smile. So they cashed it out. They took your future, and they gave it to me, and they made you work for 4 years, scrubbing tables, thinking you were doing it because we were humble. They lied to you, your independence. It wasn't a choice. It was the only option left, because I had already spent your inheritance. I felt Dana's hand on my arm, steadying me. I felt like I had been punched in the solar plexus. The timeline clicked into place. The summer of 1999. My senior year of high school. The sudden, hushed conversations in the kitchen. My father sitting me down and telling me that market conditions meant the college money wasn't there anymore, that I would need to take out loans, that I would need to work. I had believed them. I had spent the next 10 years paying off student loans, missing parties to work extra shifts, feeling proud of my grit, and all that time. The money had gone to Sloane, to pay for a failed boutique, to silence a landlord. You knew, I said, my voice barely audible. You knew the whole time. Of course I knew, Sloane said. Why do you think I felt entitled to the cabin? Why do you think I thought it was okay to use your credit? It is all the same pot. Willow, Mom and Dad established the rule 20 years ago. My problems are paid for by your assets. That is how this family works. You are the bank. I am the investment. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I dialed my parents' landline. Willow, don't, Sloane said, her bravado faltering slightly. Don't call them. I hit the speaker button and held the phone up. Hello? My mother's voice chirped. Willow? Mom, I said. I am standing here with Sloane. She just told me something interesting. Oh? Raina sounded wary. Is she moving out? She told me about the college fund, I said. She told me about 1999. Silence. It wasn't just a pause. It was a vacuum. A thick, suffocating silence that traveled through the cell towers and wrapped around my throat. "Grant?" Raina's voice was a whisper. "Did you take my money?" I asked. "Did you take the $50,000 you saved for my education and give it to Sloane to cover her debts?" "Willow, it was complicated." My father's voice came on the line. He sounded old, defeated. "It was an emergency. Sloane was in legal trouble. We intended to replace it. We really did. But the business was slow." "You let me take out $40,000 in student loans," I said. "You watched me work 60-hour weeks. You watched me skip spring break to work. You watched me stress over every textbook price. And you never told me." "We didn't want you to resent your sister," Raina said. "We wanted to protect the relationship." "Protect the relationship?" I laughed, and it sounded like glass breaking. "You sacrificed me. You have always sacrificed me. I wasn't the reliable one. Mom, I was the collateral damage." "Willow, please," Grant said. "We did what we had to do to keep the family whole." "The family isn't whole," I said. "It is a parasite and a host, and I am done being the host." I hung up. I looked at Sloane. She wasn't smiling anymore. She looked pale, stripped of the power she thought the secret would give her. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that she hadn't just revealed a secret, she had severed the last thread. "I didn't mean it like that," she stammered. "I just wanted you to understand. I was trying to make it right. That is why I did the remodel. If I could flip the cabin, I could pay off Evan. And then with the profit, I was going to pay you back for college too. I was going to fix it all. Willow, I was going to be the hero this time." I looked at her. The frantic eyes, the trembling hands. I saw the twisted logic that drove her. She truly believed that if she just dug the hole deep enough, she would eventually come out the other side. She had spent 20 years trying to gamble her way out of debt using other people's chips, convinced that the big win was just one more hand away. "You can't fix 20 years of lies with a kitchen remodel," I said. The deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said to Sloane, "you need to start moving your boxes. The clock is ticking." Sloane looked at the deputy. She looked at the cabin. Then she looked at me. And she broke. It wasn't a graceful weeping. It was a collapse. Her knees gave out, and she sank onto the gravel driveway. Burying her face in her hands, she wailed, a raw, guttural sound of a child who realizes the adults aren't coming to fix it. "I can't go," she sobbed. "I have nowhere to go. Evan is going to find me. I have no money. I have no gas in the car." I watched her. A part of me, the part that had been trained by Raina and Grant since birth, wanted to run to her, wanted to lift her up, bring her inside, make her tea, and write a check. "It's okay. We'll figure it out." But I stayed on the porch. I felt the cold brass key in my pocket. "Dana," I said softly. "Yes?" "Does the offer still stand? The one we drafted?" "It does," Dana said. "But you are not obligated to offer it." I looked at Sloane, crumpled in the dirt. I didn't hate her. I pitied her. She was a product of my parents' enabling just as much as I was a product of their neglect. They had crippled her by never letting her fall. I walked down the steps. I stopped 5 feet away from her. "Sloane," I said. She looked up, mascara streaming down her face. "I am not letting you stay here," I said. "And I am not paying Evan. That debt is yours." She flinched. "But," I continued, "I have prepaid the rent on a studio apartment in Pine Hollow for 1 month. It is small. It is not luxury, but it has a lock, and Evan doesn't know where it is." Sloane blinked, wiping her nose. "And," I said, pulling a business card from my pocket, "I have paid the retainer for a debt consolidation counselor, a forensic accountant. He will help you file for bankruptcy if that is what you need. He will help you deal with Evan legally." I held out the card. "This is help, Sloane, but it is not a rescue. You have to do the work. You have to go to the meetings. You have to get a job. And you have to sign the restitution agreement admitting you owe me the money for the damage to my house." Sloane stared at the card. "Bankruptcy?" she whispered. "But Dad will know." "Dad already knows," I said. "The secrets are over." She reached out with a shaking hand and took the card. She didn't say thank you. She just stared at it like it was a foreign object. "Get your things," I said. The clock is still ticking. The next few weeks were a blur of cold air and hard labor. I didn't hire another contractor. I couldn't afford one. And honestly, I didn't trust one. I went to the library. I watched videos. I learned how to frame a wall. I learned how to sweat copper pipe. I spent my evenings in the shell of the kitchen, wearing a respirator and goggles, tearing out the illegal work Sloane had done. I ripped out the dangerous wiring. I pulled down the moldy drywall. I hauled the debris to the dump myself, load by load in the back of my sedan. It was lonely work. The silence in the cabin was heavy. I missed the sister I thought I had. The version of Sloane who was just fun and a little chaotic, not the predator who had cannibalized my life. I mourned her. I mourned my parents. I mourned the illusion of the Parker family. But as I rebuilt the walls, placing each stud with a level and a square, measuring twice and cutting once, I felt something else growing in the empty space. I was rebuilding myself. I kept a binder, every receipt for every screw, every permit application, every email from the debt counselor giving me updates on Sloane's bankruptcy filing. I documented everything. I was done with oral histories. I lived in the realm of evidence now. Sloane was living in the studio apartment. She was working at a bakery in town, a job she complained about incessantly in the few texts she sent me, but a job she kept. Evan had backed off once the bankruptcy stay was filed. He was a bully, but he wasn't stupid enough to violate a federal court order. My parents had gone silent. No calls, no emails. They were punishing me with their absence, waiting for me to crack and come crawling back for forgiveness. They were going to be waiting a long time. The final act didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened at my aunt's house in Denver. 2 months later, it was a memorial service for my great-aunt Clara. I knew the whole family would be there. My cousins, my uncles, the extended network of Parkers who held up the family mythology. I debated not going, but hiding felt like shame, and I had nothing to be ashamed of. I walked in wearing a black dress and carrying a tote bag. The room was crowded. I saw my parents across the room near the buffet. My mother looked at me, her eyes narrowing, and turned her back. My father pretended to be fascinated by a flower arrangement. Sloane was there. She looked thinner. She was wearing a dress I recognized, one of mine she had borrowed years ago and never returned. She gave me a tight, nervous nod, then looked away. I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. My cousin, Jessica, cornered me. "Willow," Jessica said, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "We were all so shocked to hear about everything. I can't believe you kicked Sloane out on the street. And calling the police? On your own sister? Raina is devastated." I looked around. Other relatives were listening, their faces masks of judgment. The narrative had been spun. I was the monster. I was the one who had chosen money over blood. "Is that what they told you?" I asked calmly. "They said you snapped," Jessica said. "That you got greedy with the house and cut everyone off." I reached into my tote bag. I pulled out the binder. It was 3 inches thick, organized with color-coded tabs. I placed it on the kitchen island, right next to the platter of deviled eggs. "What is that?" Jessica asked. "That is the truth," I said. I opened it to the first section. The police report, the photos of the gutted kitchen, the red tag notice from the county, the email chain where Sloane impersonated me, the bank records showing the theft of the deposit, and the timeline of the college fund embezzlement. "You are welcome to read it," I said, my voice loud enough to carry over the chatter. "It is all there, the forgery, the identity theft, the loan shark, and the fact that Mom and Dad spent my college tuition to cover Sloane's first bankruptcy in '99. The room went quiet. My mother turned around, her face pale. "Willow, stop," she hissed. "This is a funeral. It is a memorial, I corrected. We are remembering the dead. I thought we should remember the truth, too. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, my hand resting on the binder. My uncle walked over. He looked at the open page, the copy of the fake email. He read it. He looked at Sloane, who was shrinking into the corner. He looked at my parents. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me with a new expression, not judgment, but discomfort, the profound, shifting discomfort of someone realizing they have been lied to for decades. I am happy to answer any questions, I said. But I won't be apologized to, and I won't be apologizing. I left the binder there. I walked out of the house. I walked past my parents, who couldn't meet my eyes. I walked past Sloane, who was looking at the floor, trapped in the reality she had created. I got in my car and drove west, toward the mountains. It was snowing by the time I reached Pine Hollow. The flakes were thick and heavy, blanketing the trees in silence. I pulled into my driveway. The cabin was dark, but it was solid. The roof was sound. The walls were framed. The new lock on the front door gleamed in the headlights. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. It was cold, but I had a heater now. I had a plan. I had a stack of permits approved by the county. I turned on the work light in the kitchen. The raw wood of the new studs glowed warm and gold. It wasn't a chef's kitchen. It wasn't a showpiece. It was just a room. But it was my room. I picked up a hammer and a box of nails. I had a lot of work to do. But for the first time in my life, every nail I drove was building something that no one could take away from me. I took a deep breath of the sawdust-scented air. I was home. Thank you for listening to this story. Family betrayal is one of the hardest things to navigate because the people who hurt you are the ones who are supposed to protect you. I hope Willow's journey gave you some satisfaction, or at least a reminder that your boundaries are worth fighting for. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had a family member cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more realistic, deep-dive dramas into the messy, complicated world of human relationships. Stay safe, stay strong, and keep your keys close.